lot of us might be wondering, is it hard to be an expat in an international environment? And has the landscape of opportunities changed for women over the last 20 years? Welcome to the Embarrassing Diary. Today's discussion is career focused, a highly anticipated discussion that you've all been asking for quite a while. I have the great honor to have an amazing guest that I've been looking forward to be on the show for a while. She delves into some really difficult questions such as, are new mothers given equal opportunities on the workplace? Should you have quote unquote masculine traits to be in a leadership position? Her name is Oana Iordachescu, and I'm going to give you just a brief summary of only a few things that she has done so far. She is a talent executive advisor, a diversity, equity, and inclusivity strategist for over 15 years. She is the founder of We Include, a consulting firm that helps organizations build sustainable businesses. She is the conference director of FAIR Barcelona. Wow, she's definitely a Swiss Army knife. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will enjoy this conversation. Hello, Anna. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Zoe. It's a pleasure.
As I said before, but I will mention it also in the recording, I've been following your footsteps since I came to the Netherlands, and it's been very inspiring to see all those steps in your career and moving in different fields and in different environments. And I wrote in my diary, one day I want to become Oana.
This is very surprising, right? Whenever I hear this, and it makes me feel a bit shy, to be honest, because I don't know what people see, right? I know what I'm doing, but I don't necessarily know what people see, and it's nice to hear that it's not too bad.
So I would like to ask you, starting this conversation, how, from your experience, how do you see the current field for opportunities for women?
Ooh, better than before.
Yeah.
It's a big question. It's probably a very long answer as well. I'm just gonna maybe share what I see. First of all, I see a more interesting way of women communities to create opportunities for themselves. This did not
Mm.
exist 20 years ago the same way. Like, I am grateful for those who have paved the way to say, we will help you, we will create path
Mm.
for you, we will create advocacy for legislation to help you. We now have some very interesting movements when it comes to legislation to uncover, to kind of demystify these ideas that, oh yes, women and men are equal. I'm like, sure, at core. But when it comes to the world of work, when it comes to the world of development, education, there's still a very big difference, especially if we look macro. Maybe some countries, some regions, some geographies are doing better than others. That doesn't mean progress is done, like we are finished.
Mm.
So I would say there is a better situation, a better landscape for women in general, especially if we think business or economic power. But we still have a long way to go.
I agree 100%. Growing up, I thought, yes, we can do this and everything. And then seeing it from the inside, I still feel like there's still a lot of work to be done. And from your personal perspective, because you have climbed the corporate ladder, did you find it hard to be a woman in a male dominated industry?
This question is very interesting because my industry, for those who don't necessarily know or want to go deeper a bit, my industry is HR, talent acquisition, but within tech organization. So you could say it's a male dominated field. Still, it's changing. But my field specifically, having in mind the countries that I moved through, I'm just going to give you a very small story here, because in Romania, most people in talent acquisition or HR are women. So I
Mhm.
was launched in my career in a field that was very full of strong women. Good
Okay,
nego-
okay, that's
Great
nice.
negotiators, also, there is this idea of the women are more nurturing. So indeed, when it comes to recruitment and HR, you have an
Mm.
increased level of empathy. You have to kind of, in order to be successful. But my first 5 6 years were in this field, although my clients, maybe they have been more men, right? The
Mm,
clients we were internally or externally. So it was a very nice balance. And then I moved to the Netherlands, and I worked first of all in agency and recruitment. Then I moved
mhm,
internally
mhm.
with Facebook, but I think we were 10% women, even in recruitment. So for me, it was kind of boom, a little bit of a brain explosion to see how different same industry was in Romania versus Western Europe. And this is replicated throughout UK, Netherlands, Germany a bit,
Mhm.
because the recruitment business is more associated with sales versus HR.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
different
yeah.
people kind of join for different reasons. So I wouldn't say necessarily for me I I personally had any particular problems or
Mhm.
blockages. I don't know of them. If I did, nobody tells you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I think I had a very open-minded approach to, I
Right.
bring things to the table. So you will have to like me. You will have to promote me. You will have to kind of create conversation with me. I really focused more on the idea of what do I learn, what do I bring, what do I create.
And did you find it, regardless of the gender equality or inequality, did you face some challenges yourself, um, in order to acquire a leadership position?
For sure. And I think for those who work in international environments, this is a reality. The cultural norms and the working
Mm,
norms are tend to be different. So you need to learn fast what works, what doesn't work.
mhm,
Specifically, for example, at the beginning of my career, I'm not a native English speaker, but I was working with a lot of like English clients, English environments, English businesses, a lot like between the UK and US. And you have to focus on improving your language skills. Like I'm not even saying communication skills, I'm saying language skills. So I think
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think if I would have been a native with the same level of skills that or the same attitude, I probably would have progressed faster.
for
That's a
sure.
reality, right?
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
is the second piece that I feel personally I struggled with, or I had to reflect, and I had to maybe make some mistakes as well, was the approach to work. My personality, but it's also maybe my work culture, is more on the sarcastic negative side. I will ask a lot of questions. I will probably be saying this doesn't work because, or be a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
more inquisitive or critical. And then I would I would work with other within other working cultures that are a bit more like go go go, right? The American culture, like
Mm,
we'll test, we'll break it, we'll figure it out. They're very different. I
mm,
love the combination of those two worlds now, but it was a painful process. So I think more the
yeah.
cultural aspects, the communication, the problem solving, the conflict resolution, they are different culture by culture. And maybe people listening to you, they're
Mm.
familiar with the book Culture Map, or similar studies around like how do we communicate based on our background and our language, and how do we work in international environments.
There was someone recently telling me he was from America, and he told me the way we write our CV in the States is completely different than the
Totally.
Netherlands. Uh, like sometimes we even have to say everything that we're doing. Well, in the Netherlands, we just want three things. Why do you want it? And very specific. But I also wanted to ask you. I recently saw a documentary about the former
Hmm.
Chancellor Angela
Hmm.
Merkel, and the commentator was saying she's a great leadership example while she carries masculine features. And I was like, whoa. And he said the masculine demeanor,
Yeah.
the clothing, the hair. And I really thought of it to myself. I said, one day if I want to do something in leadership position, do I have to have those masculine quote unquote
Hmm.
skills?
Hmm. Yeah.
What do you think about
Oh, I,
that?
it's a sore point, to be honest, because what does it mean, right? Like, does it mean that also men with feminine traits don't belong, right? So it's
Good
really about
point.
the traits. It's really not about the gender. I feel is not while it's influenced, right, by it. We also must be a bit more realistic that this is a Western world.
Mm.
I think a Western economy as well. Like if you go in businesses, or I see now, I'm paying a little bit more attention to African economies, and you see people, wearing different things, kind of expressing themselves in a different way, and it doesn't feel so gendered, if that makes sense.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
think we
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of developed this, the McKinsey's and the Harvard Business Review and all these kind of ways of dressing back from the day, from the 1900s,
Yeah.
is translating very slowly. I see more and more women, and even men, let's say so, in positions of power, in positions of leadership, trying to break the mold that is, blue suit, black suit, gray suit maximum. uh, this is it,
Yeah.
right? but
Yeah, yeah.
but it's slow, right? And I think a lot of people, in a way, they're also like, I have more important stuff to do. So
Mhm,
only
mhm.
there's somebody, I think, in the Australian government. I probably saw her on Instagram, so not the very, not the very, but she is basically the first. She's Gen Z, and she's kind of a first deputy, very very young, but also she's making a statement of showing up with, short skirts
Mhm.
and her tattoos and everything, and it's like fine. And we see this with indigenous groups in the US, when they're like, or in Australia or in New Zealand, where they come with their own kind of port and customs and everything. So it is true when it comes to, let's say, the physical appearance, that it's
Yeah.
very hard. I don't necessarily think it is the case for, like, the way we speak or the way we make decisions. I think that's somehow very situational, and you will have men who
Mhm.
have feminine kind of approach if you want to split the world in feminine and masculine traits. But I think we start to see a bigger acceptance to the blend of things and to situational leadership. I think this is very interesting to
Mm.
analyze.
Very, very interesting what you're saying. And I think that's maybe even the future. We don't have to define it only the masculine, the old school style. Neither we have to necessarily blend in on that. We can bring something that is new, that is
Totally.
refreshing. Yeah. And coming to the also subject that it's a question, a very personal one to me about new mothers.
Mhm.
I recently became a mother,
Congratulations.
and thank you. So before I was thinking, oh, it will be easy. I will be able to do it. Career and family, it's super. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And now that I'm doing it, I find it hard. So what do you think? Do you see that they are given like a lot of opportunities to new mothers? For instance, a friend of mine told me recently we had to reject a candidate because she was pregnant and the other candidate was not. And I was like, "Whoa, is this even allowed?"
No,
And do you?
it's not allowed.
Yeah, right. So how do you see that field?
I'll speak from a very, let's say, legislative or compliance, but also maybe situation. I'm not a mother myself, so I cannot speak from that perspective per se. I think the conversations I'm having with parents, let's say so, is that the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity is there, but the time is not equal. There is a certain,
Mm,
I think, we're, especially in maybe more modern, more inclusive environments, while they're very, like, welcoming to new parents, to people who want to build families. I mean, I remember back when I started 15 years ago, one of my first interviews in the field was like, are you planning to have kids? Do you have a husband or a boyfriend? And I was like, I'm running away from here. This is not the type of conversation
yeah.
we should be having, right? Especially that I was 19, so it was ridiculous for me. But this is a reality that we don't want, I think we don't want to see. And
Mm,
I've talked a lot with men parents who are the first ones to say, my wife, if they are in a heterosexual relationship, if my wife does not have the same chances that I have after having a baby.
mm,
One, because some mothers might actually opt in to stay longer home, or they they need more
yeah.
time, they need there's a different type of physiology need that everybody has. So there's definitely a lull, there's definitely a period before and after that needs to be incorporated, and you probably experience that. You need to become realistic about your level of energy and your level of, like, interest to give it 100%. right?
100%. Yeah, 100% what you're saying. Yes, exactly.
But while there is legislation to protect parents from these situations, there are internal norms and internal
Mm.
opinions. And I think we all have seen when somebody, let's say, I've been in this situation where maybe they were like managers that didn't have kids, and then people started having kids on the team, and they're like, well, you're not really here all the time. We're going to have this event
Mm.
after work. Can you come? And I'm like, no. So, so I'm making a very weird like I don't know I think there's so much to say here, but what I would say is that I have seen organizations that are making conscious efforts to be
Mm.
as equitable for
Mhm.
men and for women, for parents and non-parents, when it comes to asking to do the extra mile. This is where the big
Yeah.
problem is. I don't think it's with the work itself, with the production, the productivity, the efficacy. I don't think that's where the problem is. I think the problem is, can you stay for an event, a beer after work? Can you come for this leadership trip in Switzerland or whatever, right? Like, and a lot of parents do not have that ability, right? Or will, and we punish them sometimes. I think we are still punishing
Mm.
them.
Thank you so much for that, because I feel sometimes bad for going to pick up my son from school at 5:30, like sometimes 5:20, and I stop the meeting and I'm thinking, oh my God, I should be there. Indeed, exactly. And we also have that from the
Yes.
other side, this
The
imposter
fear.
syndrome. Yeah.
Fear, right? No, it's a fear, right?
That's
Because you have seen people being put aside, maybe not discriminated against, but left behind.
exactly, exactly. So I feel so much compassion on what you just said. So thank you. Thank you. Like really, I'm gonna scream it out there. Thank you for mentioning this. And I also wanted to ask you, maybe it's a personal, more of a personal
Mhm.
question. I usually ask all of my guests this. Is a 2 point question. Do you think is career essential for happiness? And what is happiness to you?
Mm, okay. It's a very hard one, Zoe.
Sorry.
Now I'm actually working on a project with a good friend of mine who's a coach, and we're doing some sprint on defining a way to help people build their careers in a happy way. If that, so I'm turning your question into a purpose, right? But to answer your first question, I don't know. I cannot necessarily answer for everybody. I just can say what I see. That the answer is no per se. That doesn't mean it's
Mm,
not important. Career, but career and going to the gym can be equally important to some people. Like, we were actually having a conversation about a friend of the family who is very passionate about like doing triathlons and all these things, and she has a great career. She's like very good at it, and she puts a lot of effort into it. But that's not the happiness point for her. The happiness point is acquiring these milestones and kind of creating this journey for her when it comes to physical or mental kind of resilience. What I do think we underestimate is the power of poverty. So why I preach equal opportunities for career development is because once you understand that you don't necessarily need to be rich. I don't necessarily associate career with wealth per se, or even growth, to be
mm,
honest. But I do associate it with a level of income, a level of financial security that allows you to be stress free, focused on your values, focused on your family, focused on your friends, focused on things that give you pleasure, versus I grew up in poverty, and I know the strain that families have or people have when they don't have the financial security. So I do associate career with happiness from that perspective.
mm,
Is this a good enough career for me to create that security, that safety, that space to be ambitious? You cannot be ambitious when you need to scrape for every piece of cent for
mm,
for
mm.
the minimum stuff. This is where the world is wrong somehow. I think in general we tend to push people just to like maximize everything. Well,
Mm,
maximize career, no, but we don't
yeah,
necessarily push people to maximize all the other values or the other like things that make them happy. That makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, we've discussed something similar with a friend of mine in a previous episode. And he said that in war times of war, when people had to think about what they're gonna eat, how they're gonna survive, they couldn't think about their passion, the true
Sure.
calling, right? And now we live. Some of us are privileged enough to reach in the Western world and can't think about that,
Yeah.
and that is indeed a privilege. Sometimes we even forget it, that hey, I actually have the opportunity to think about it. And some listeners might not even have that because they're listening from different countries. So it's really nice that you're pointing that out.
And in a way, I mean, again, maybe some people who would listen to this, they would be like, hey, people who don't have financial means, they're also happy. And I agree with that, right? But there are means and there are means. There's
Yeah.
survival means, and there's like, I'm fine with, again, maybe my grandma who worked on a farm and on a mine, she was like fine with everything in terms of like how her life was lived and the level of happiness she wanted or could achieve at that point. But
Mm.
it's a very big philosophical topic. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And also wanted to ask you a question regarding nowadays modern dating. I hear this question a lot from my friends. That I really hear that sometimes, like guys tell me, I want her to be ambitious, but not to earn more money than me. I want, there is all of
Sorry.
these things that we want. So, do you think that this is indeed the case, that there is this quote unquote? Uh, do they feel threatened if a woman has five leadership positions, etc.?
I don't know. I don't know. Right. I'm so far away from this topic, and I have some strong
Yeah.
opinions around like yes, people should not, right? But again,
Mm,
I now live in Spain, and in Spain there is a huge conversation about machismo. So what they call this idea of men want to overpower women, and this is both through, there's a lot of conversation of domestic violence, which also comes from the imbalance of power and also comes from other strains between genders.
mm,
um, but there's also conversation around the machismo in work, right, like in leadership position, and how that comes together. So I think throughout life, dating, career, health, education, there is an underlying piece of, we are just not there in all countries, in all regions, right, to consider women as, how could it's going to sound very bad, but I think in certain societies women are still considered second class citizens. So
mm.
when they try to kind of penetrate, there is a it's probably not even conscious most of the times, if there is, but for dating I don't hear it much. Maybe I'm in a bubble. I think
No,
men in
no,
my life are like, yes please, go queen.
my husband tells me, "Oh, if you ever do good with the podcast, I'm really okay to be a
Yeah.
stay-at-home dad." We were watching The
Yeah.
Crown, and then Philip stepped back, and then he was like, "That's absolutely fine. He's also, enjoying this life without having to work. That's fine. You can be a queen." And I'm like, "That's very funny."
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's very different on levels of
yeah,
education, on levels of mentality towards gender equality.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
very very interesting.
And I'm sorry, I feel like maybe some of those questions are difficult to answer
Of
because
course
I
they're difficult,
understand
but
that.
that's why we're here, right?
But no, I wanted to close this beautiful conversation and just ask you, what do you think that are the steps ahead that we can make, or that are being made, or what are we going to see in the future that inspires you, or makes you happy regarding women opportunities?
um Invest in younger generations. I think that's a big thing that we could do. All of them, not just women, right? Like, I really don't speak here from a single gender perspective. Of course, we are also starting to see a wider spectrum here. I'm just saying overall, can the younger generation, can we focus in our education for younger generations around maybe diminishing the conversation around gender, to be honest, if that would be, maybe we can
Mm,
we can
great.
start talking more holistically. We need to know the history, we need to know the legacy that we're coming with, but looking more towards the future. And I think there are some educational systems out there that really focus on human traits versus gender-specific traits. And this comes for maybe a lot of different dimensions of diversity, disability, ethnicity, and so on. Like we should maybe start recognizing and celebrating differences more versus pointing out what could be
Mhm.
wrong about it. So education is one, and I would also say maybe a bit of louder contributions in the family conversations. I think a
Mm.
lot of things happen at home. A lot of the patterns that you learn at home. So again, maybe it falls a bit on parents or on the extended family. In work, we see a lot of leaders that try. I would say we have, let's say, in organizations, we have chief diversity officers, we have champions for diversity and inclusion. We just need more money. That's all. We just need more
Yeah.
funding
Yeah.
for things that really matter and make a change. So yeah, I would say these three things, like education, and I'm thinking school system from all
Mm.
levels, family, and then organizational investment. Governments will follow a little bit, or I think there is an effort there. But it's such a macro thing when governments push for an initiative or a program that I don't think we see in our day-to-day lives the effects, but we definitely see the effects in our day-to-day lives if we think about our immediate
Mm.
circle or just next one.
Yeah, nice, nice. And I think it comes from small initiatives from within, from us, from our community, from the things that your community is doing, for instance. And I actually wanted to ask you, since we're closing this beautiful conversation, when can people find you? What are some projects you're working at the moment?
Find me in Barcelona on the 18th of April. So I've changed my life in the past 3 months because I've launched what I think it is the first annual European Workplace Inclusion Conference. So this is happening in Barcelona, where I'm lucky somehow to be joined by speakers from all over Europe that are policymakers, that are corporate leaders, that are academia and researchers, and we're just gonna give the next level of insights of what it means to create inclusion in the workplace. So I'm gonna be there because I need to moderate and I need to coordinate. But overall, find me on LinkedIn, of course. I also launched a consulting agency focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion projects in small and medium companies. It's called We Include. So yeah, find me in these two places, very easy, and on LinkedIn if you want to connect anytime.
Amazing, amazing. And I'll put everything in the description. I like the fair part. If I can make it, I will come for sure.
Airbarcelona.com.
It sounds really, really fun. And thank you for everything, Oana. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you as well for having me. It's been a fun conversation.
I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. It was definitely a really insightful conversation for me. So, if you were until the end of this podcast, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, but of course to rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to also follow us on Instagram. And of course, if you want to be part of this podcast, you can just simply send us an email. That is for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all your support and see you next time.